Essa música.
Hello, I am Aisha.
And Paula, your cultural hybrid mental health therapist.
Here to explore unfiltered and heartfelt conversations on core issues
that affect us as human beings. Get ready for honest, captivating,
and real stories that take you on a journey to navigate your life
in the best possible way.
So grab a seat
and stay with us on this episode of
Do We Have Your Attention? Welcome back to the Do We Have Your Attention podcast. And for our new listeners, welcome to season 2 of the Do We Have Your Attention podcast. Yay!
We are super excited to have you. It's a new year, a new season. Some people might say it's a new you, but I don't really believe in the new you. Let's just say an advanced version of yourself.
Hopefully.
And we are your hosts, Paula and
Aisha. And for our season 2 premiere episode, we'll be diving into an exciting discussion. Drum roll, please. Thank you for that. Okay, the question and the topic we're discussing today is, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?
Deep.
Deep, but we're starting deep.
So before we obviously get into it, let's reintroduce our feelings check-in.
Yeah.
And our feelings check-in is like the color wheel. So feelings check-in, color wheel, whatever you want to call it. How are you feeling today, Aisha?
Great question. You know, earlier I was feeling annoyed, so I was feeling a little bit gray for something that was totally out of my control, but I figured out how to be in control. So now I'm feeling happy, positive. Plus, this is our first episode of season 2, so I'm very much excited to record and to be back with you and on the mic and with the team. I'm very much excited. What about you, Paula? How are you feeling?
It feels so strange even saying season 2, especially me being someone who loves TV shows, loves things that have different seasons.
Yeah.
It feels nice to be like, oh, we have a season 1 and now we have a season 2 and then we have a season 4.
Exactly.
You see how I skipped 3, I went to 4.
Well, only up from there.
No, but I'm feeling just like yourself as well. And I know we're talking earlier on before we started recording. I had a similar situation where a lot of things are out. I'm in a season where things are not in my control. And I am really trying to figure out how to navigate it without feeling gray, which is more anxious or gloomy or worried. So I would say I'm really trying to be optimistic.
Right. Oh, I like that word.
Optimistic in general. Optimistic about our first episode of just being back. So I would say I'm more around a yellow. But then I have a little bit of, I guess, what could be called curiosity as well. So maybe orange or pink to see how this conversation goes. Because this is a really cool topic.
Right.
I'm sure you would agree.
I know. I agree. And to our listeners, we want you to take a moment to check in with yourself. So how are you feeling today as you're listening to the episode, wherever you're at, whether you're home, you're taking a lunch break, you're driving home, how are you feeling? Because as we've always acknowledged, it's good to take a pause and reflect on what's going on inside.
Absolutely. All right. So,
today's episode, we'll be focusing on truly understanding the connection with being right or being happy. But most importantly, addressing and understanding its roots. So like we said earlier, deep.
All right. I don't know why I'm feeling anxious all of a sudden.
Oh, don't be anxious. I think it's because, it's been a while. We've taken a long break.
Yeah, we did. We took a break.
It's like that skill that you have that you're trying to connect back with after taking a break, like riding a bike and you're scared to go on the road again.
You're absolutely right. It's that skill. But it's also the aspect, I think something I took from season 1 was the podcast is actually I love the fact that we get to do this, but it also requires vulnerability from us.
Yeah.
So almost reminding myself like, oh, you're about to get deep. You're about to get vulnerable.
Oh, God. And it's so
when that
uncomfortable
happens,
being vulnerable.
and then you start stalling. because you're like, oh, I don't know what to expect. But okay, let's get started.
Let's not stall further because I know the people want to hear what we have to say.
Let's get started. So when you hear the phrase, do you want to be right?
Yeah.
Or do you want to be happy? What does that mean to you personally? And can you actually think of a time in your life where you did prioritize being right over being happy?
So I guess we're just diving into the vulnerability.
You see what I
mean? Not me being put on the spot. Okay, I'll answer. I came prepared to be vulnerable. So when I think about the phrase, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? I'm thinking about it more related to weighing the importance of whether I want to be right. Or I guess that means insisting on my perspective or winning on an argument, or thinking about the potential cost of what that thing that I'm focusing on, like being right in quotes, the potential cost of just being right. So I think about it more like, can I just let this go, or do I want to stand on this perspective that I want to stand on right now? You know, if I give an example, I just think about when you said that question, I was like, oh my God, I have
so many
scenarios, but let me just keep it cute and PG. I'll just think about interactions with co-workers, for example. If we're thinking about like clinical judgment about a client or just consulting with your co-workers about a client, I think sometimes it's hard to not, especially if it's my client, it's hard to not be like, but I know what's best for this client. I know this client best. I know that this direction that I want to take would be what's best for them versus them thinking like, for example, if you want your client to stay, you know, I work at a campus. So if I wanted my client to stay on campus versus the school or supervisor or director, whoever is saying maybe they should go home, it's very hard for me to not be like, ugh. But I think if I see them consistently, if we give them the adequate resources that they can manage their mental health and still succeed on campus. But I also have to start thinking about what's best for the client. Like, yes, this is what I think is best for the client. But one, does the client even think this is what's best for them? Number one. Number two, maybe because I only get an hour with this client one-on-one every week, other people that are involved with them probably know them more and have a bigger perspective. So I think that's just a simple example of when I've thought about, oh, I want to be right because this is my client. I want to advocate for them. I want to make sure that they get the best things. But sometimes you actually end up causing more harm because, you know, we want to think about focusing on the holistic care of the client, not just that 1 hour not making decisions based off that 1 hour that you see a client. I hope that wasn't just a long, complicated explanation, but what do you think?
That makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate you sharing that as well.
Yeah.
There was something that you said, and it's annoying me right now that I'm not remembering. And if you remember, please tell me where you said, like, you stand on, is it like stand on being right?
Yes.
This notion of sort of standing on something to the point where you're resistant. Is, you know, that I think of things like stains are very stubborn to remove because they are just there for some reason. Yeah. And I really like that you said that because when I think, do I want to be right or do I want to be happy? Is this idea of, do you want to stay believing that you know it all?
Right.
Or do you want to actually stay in a position where you can learn?
Yeah. And that's a good way to put it.
Sometimes, unfortunately, we think we know it all.
We definitely think we know it all a lot of times, especially, again, giving my example, if you've had years of experience working as a therapist or as an accountant, you have experience as a parent, you have 6 kids now, you feel like you're experienced and you know it all. But the reality is there's always room for knowledge and there's always room to self-reflect.
Absolutely.
And think about other perspectives too.
Absolutely. And I was sort of trying to think about if there was a time where I wanted to be right over being happy. Yeah. I would definitely say that for me personally, and I might be wrong, and maybe this is where I need to do a little bit more deeper self-reflection. Yeah. But I think I am naturally someone who doesn't even believe that she's right. Oh. So, you know, there's people that are like, people fall in different categories, spectrums. I'm naturally someone who had to get to a point where I started realizing like there's validity in like my opinions and my feelings and whatnot. So I actually go with the opposite of, and I guess it has its upsides where it allows me really want to genuinely understand, genuinely hear different opinions.
Yeah.
But because I'm someone who also naturally became, actually, no. Let me backtrack. Because I started off being someone who did not believe she was right.
Yeah.
And I started learning like, oh, I do have opinions and I can share them and be loud about them or be assertive about them.
Right.
A lot of people now perceive that as me wanting to be right. You see what I mean?
Right.
That's why I said
mean.
I think there might be some type of self-reflection there.
Yeah.
So in thinking about it, it's hard for me to come up with like a time in my life where I felt like I prioritized that. But I think the example you gave as a therapist is very, very necessary in the sense where, especially if you're guiding a client, doing a little bit of guided discovery mixed with Socratic questioning. And then you're like, are you actually moving with the flow? Are you moving with the flow of where this conversation is going?
Yeah.
Or are you trying to somewhat like validate like a clinical hunch?
Right.
So you're trying to be right in this case.
Right.
I don't know if
and we're humans.
You seem like you get what I'm saying.
No, I get what you're saying. And we're humans. So, of course, when you work with the client, you immediately start to connect the dots. And obviously, as a human being, you're like, I just want them to get it because I this is the point that they need to see and get that aha moment that will help them become better versions of themselves. But you can't do it at your own pace. You got to do it at the client's pace. And
absolutely.
Just so you're not validating yourself like, yeah, I'm a great therapist. Look how I did that. Okay.
That is so real.
But I think I like the direction that we're going to because I do want to ask, when we talk about like being right or do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Why do you feel or why do you think some people feel such a strong need to be always right? Do you think is rooted in self-esteem, insecurity, or do you think it's something else? What are your thoughts?
That's an excellent question. I think in addition to that being an excellent question as well, it kind of goes back to what I was sharing earlier on. I think it's for like various different reasons. It's not a one size fits all. Also for people, it can even be 3 different reasons or multiple different reasons for just one person. As soon as you asked that question, my trauma therapist hat came on. If I'm being honest, I was like, ooh, trauma. And that happens sometimes in my sessions too, where knowing something's happening and you know like, oh, this is a trauma response. Where you're like, trauma.
Yeah.
I think it is rooted in trauma to a large extent, even insecurity and self-esteem and whatnot.
Agreed.
So say, for example, like I mentioned, I'm someone who did not know that there was validity in her feelings and her opinions.
Yeah.
Because a lot of my own, I guess what you would call inner childhood trauma was sort of rooted around silencing someone, gaslighting, saying that, oh, nobody's gonna believe you, like your feelings don't matter. So a lot of that puts you in a position where, self-esteem, low self-esteem, insecurity, you sort of find yourself not really truly believing that. So now, fast forward to where I'm at where you can't even shut me up if you try to.
Period. That's where we want you to be.
What? We want to be here, but we also want to make sure that there is room for awareness, growth, learning, differences of opinions. Where now, for someone who might fall under that category, they might find themselves always wanting to prove the validity of their feelings and their emotions and their opinions. That they don't even recognize that it can come across like they're trying to be right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I think to a big degree, it really is rooted in our experiences, the messaging that we also get, how we see people deal with conflict.
Absolutely.
Growing up, if you see your parents dealing with conflict where one person was always right, the other person was always apologetic, a lot of what we sort of absorb in our environment. And unfortunately, because I don't think anybody really was taught how to have healthy conflict. Which, by the way, we have an episode on conflict.
We do. Go check it out.
Side notes. But
I love that.
On a serious note, though, but I think there's many different reasons. If we want to take just trauma out of it, we can also say it's rooted in identity.
Absolutely.
Like identity formation as well.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, if you have security in yourself, if you have a high self-esteem, if you have self-trust, dependency or whatever you want to call it, you don't need to prove anything to anybody.
Absolutely.
You don't need to prove the validity of
No.
what you're experiencing.
Yeah.
You kind of are just like, I hear you. You hear me. That's all that matters.
Right. Like
what
you're
do you
solid.
think?
Yeah. Oh, you're asking me. I thought you...
Yes.
I thought you were phrasing it like...
The look on your face right now, you're like, oh, me?
Of course you're talking to me. Sorry, I was just like so into what you were saying that I forgot that we're having a conversation. Okay. We're joking too much on this episode. I'm so sorry. So I agree with what you said. I do think that trauma and all of that trauma, all the things that you internalize, I like that you really focused on how you've experienced conflict growing up. You know, if one parent was always the right one, the other one was always the wrong one.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes observing that, you kind of tend to attach yourself to one style, just depending on your experience in that environment. That's very toxic, obviously. Just to add on to what you were saying, I think cultural dynamics also play a big role. I definitely think that there are some cultures that are not very, well, I think human beings make sense of the culture. So still going back to how human beings kind of mold their own understanding and meanings of cultural values, beliefs, and all of that stuff. I think that those structures can really, really affect how we are internalizing, like just standing on being right all the time. And
absolutely.
I think if we even want to extend it further, it could also be a thing about gender and how, you know, gender roles and how, as a woman, your experiences in the world and all these societal expectations as a man, you know, all of these many things that exist in the world. I think they definitely play a role. But there's also confirmation bias, which is our natural urge to seek confirmation in our pre-existing beliefs and ideas.
Yeah.
And I think when people feel strongly about a view or a belief, they often look for ways to validate that belief. And when it's challenged, they become very defensive. They become very resistant. And I think the more you're locked in, well, the more you feel very strongly connected with the belief, the harder it is to kind of break it down or to be open to other perspectives.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head, honestly, on confirmation bias and this notion that internal validation is not enough. You need external validation too as well. And for some people, it is rooted in, like you said, the reaction is sort of defensiveness. So like, For some other people, it's, if I don't get that external validation, then I'm going to almost reject this thing.
Right.
Because I need that external validation to be able to be sure that I'm right.
Yeah.
Whereas for some other people, having someone say no or having somebody differ from your opinion, for a lot of people feels like their power is being taken away from them.
I agree.
Or their autonomy or agency is being taken away from them. And I want to make it clear, it's perceived as autonomy, agency, and power taken away. It's not.
Right.
Because
it's not real.
Nobody can take away your agency and autonomy.
I like that you said that.
I was about to say if you don't let them, but let's just leave it as that. I'm with you.
Which is true. But I like what you're saying because that could also lead to the idea of control. And you know, when you always want to be right and you're now in spaces where that's challenged a little bit, you feel very vulnerable, uncomfortable. And as a way to protect yourself or to feel like you're still in control, you start to become in denial and delusional and avoidant a little bit. Just to not admit that, okay, I know what's going on here is because I feel a little bit vulnerable and I don't want to admit it. So, and it's making me feel like I'm not in control anymore. So I'm just going to find other ways to validate and stand on this perspective that obviously can be open to many more perspectives.
And obviously we see things like this very common. This notion of do you want to be right? Or do you want to be happy?
Yeah.
If you know the number of times I have had to say this as a couples therapist, what does that tell you? That relational dynamics, you find it so common in relational dynamics, especially whether with friends or family or romantic relationship, where when you're dealing with conflict, because everybody's feelings matter. There's so many feelings in the mix here. And it's like, if I agree with your own, then I'm forgetting my own and I'm leaving my own and my autonomy is being taken away from me.
Right.
And I don't know if all of these feelings can exist at the same time, if they're not all the same. And it's so interesting how our brains sort of process as human beings too as well.
You know it.
In not recognizing that being able to actually not being right is not about this notion. You know how some people say, oh, happy wife, happy life. And then they kind of attach it to this notion that, oh, your wife is always right.
Oh, you just avoid having conversations that need to be had.
You just agree. I don't like that. I think that it takes away from what people really mean when they say, do you want to be happy? It really just means the happiness is in being able to actually connect with someone, even with differing opinions. Yeah. You build and strengthen a level of intimacy that you can never experience.
I agree.
If you're connecting with someone where all of you are just agreeing.
Agree.
And that's what the happy is.
Yeah, because I think that everybody likes to be in a space where they can connect with other people that can be vulnerable. Like, I can be vulnerable, this person can be vulnerable too. Because it just emphasizes that we're all humans and we're all imperfect. And in that way, you can be kinder, one, to yourself or to the other person, especially, let's say, if your perspective was the one that may not have been the right in quotes, may have been the one that needed to be challenged a little bit or reframed a little bit. If the other person is giving you that space or being vulnerable and acknowledging and saying, hey, you know what? I didn't have all the answers and that's okay. I think it can help the other person reflect a little bit and be like, you know what? I don't have the answers too, but this is just where I was, like let's have an open dialogue about it. So I think communication is very, very important too when we talk about the happiness piece with being right, in quotes.
Absolutely. And would you say that it's about letting go of the need to be right? Or is it more about self-acceptance? Is it more about having peace of mind and making peace? What would you say the notion of really, truly being happy, like, what does that mean?
I think it's more about realizing that being correct is not the only thing that matters. There's bigger things that matter. Your relationship with this person, your connection with this person, being vulnerable, your growth. There's other things that matter. I think a lot of times we attach ourselves with whatever the situation is. Like, if your happiness is dependent on being right all the time, you're going to be tense and there's going to be a lot of tension. There's going to be a lot of conflict in your relationship. The true peace comes when you let go and you communicate effectively and you're open to listening to what the other person has to say and you come to a conclusion where we're not attaching emotions to what the situation was. We're just hearing each other out. Because that's how we become happy. Like what you said, we're building connectedness. We're building intimacy in a way that we've never done before. That's what brings true happiness. Like, wow, I know Paula a little bit better now because I can understand where she's coming from. I understand how she thinks. I value how she thinks. That also in turn helps me grow in terms of how our friendship works, if that makes sense. What do you think?
You make a very powerful point there. I completely agree with you, and sort of what I'm even hearing from what you're saying is that sometimes there's a level of egocentrism that happens in contexts like this where if you're not able to sort of see outside of your own self, your own perspective, your own world, it actually does not really allow you see people in the way in which you can receive them and maybe even love them. Like authentically love them, authentically value the way in which they think and the way in which they process and the things that are important to them. So it's interesting just sort of hearing you share that to some degree there is a level of egocentrism and self-centeredness that comes with being in a position of wanting to be right.
And speaking of the ego, how do you think it influences our decision to fight for being right? And also, how do you think having that ego all the time impacts our mental health, especially if it constantly needs validation? What are your thoughts?
That's a deep one.
It's very deep. Well, we have to talk about the ego since you brought it up.
Pride. So when I think ego, obviously I think pride. I think fear. I think insecurity. I think some level of shame as well. I know sometimes when we think ego, we think like big, like I'm proud of it. It's actually fear, insecurity, shame, pride. And a lot of these things are probably some of the worst characteristic traits that we can have. And I want to make it clear, we all have
egos.
Like, it's not a situation where it just varies.
Yeah.
And then there's people where their ego shows more in relationship dynamics than who they really are or who they would like at least to portray in such environments. So unfortunately, it puts people in a position where they don't really recognize that until it's too late.
It's too late.
For me, I feel as though it's a very difficult question to, answer right now, because I'm in this weird space in my life where, let me just say, a lot of things are being reflected to me, and I'll be a little bit vulnerable in this moment.
Thank you. We love vulnerability.
There was a video on Instagram that I shared with you a few days ago where someone was talking about healthy dating, and when you've always been the one in a relationship dynamic that was the one who was being intentional about sort of having a healthy relationship dynamic. Yeah. And then if it changes, you are now not the only one. You're dating someone who's also that same, and maybe even a little bit more. That naturally, just by relating with them, it reflects to you a lot of things that you need to work on. And a lot of things that you need to address as well. So I think for me, currently the person that I have been dating now, there's been a lot that has sort of been reflected to me in that way, where I have found myself fighting with pride. Or ego or fear or insecurity, where I'm like, like, no, I don't want to know being right is not the right thing, but how can I sit with this uncomfortable feeling of having to receive something that I don't necessarily like to hear, or something I don't necessarily agree with, and I sort of find myself checking myself with that. Now, see, the thing here, and I can be very honest with you, there's something really beautiful about just kind of letting go. As opposed to fighting something because you want to prove something to yourself. That it does not even exist, because nobody is 100% right.
Nope.
So if you really think about it, it's like some strange cycle of internal validation that you need to sort of keep doing. Right. So for me, I think that, I would say that is where it comes from. The fight to be right really is as a result of our egos taking a lot of space that should not necessarily be there. Yeah. But I understand it. Like, I understand in the sense where as human beings, we want to protect ourselves. As human beings, we don't know if we trust what we're experiencing or what people are giving to us. Right. But I would say that what I have also seen is we make better, intuitive, clearer decisions when we're actually not in that ego state.
Agreed.
As crazy as it sounds. Yeah. So if we're saying that, then we're saying that, being secure, being regulated, being vulnerable actually allows you see things clearer and actually make decisions that in turn end up being in your own benefit.
And
so, of course, you can see how that can impact anybody's mental health.
Agreed.
I'm curious to know what your own thoughts are on this.
I agree with you with everything that you've said. Like you were saying, the ego is very protective of our self-image. When someone challenges our thoughts, our beliefs, our opinions, the ego feels very threatened. Trust me, I know, because I have an ego. And so does everyone else that's listening, right? We all have that ego. And I think sometimes if we're not in a space like what Paula is saying about taking a moment to regulate yourself, being more open-minded, it kind of can come across as aggressive. Yeah. And just thinking about it, I'm thinking about the example you gave of the video you shared. Yes, if you were in a space where you were still feeling like, I'm a therapist, I know it all. I know what I'm doing. I've dealt with this multiple times. I know how to deal with relationships the best. I'm a family therapist, relationship expert. You will never grow in your relationships because then your ego is taking control of how you're interacting with people. And that's not necessarily productive because, one, isn't that exhausting? Just imagine if you're the one always right to your relationship all the time. It sounds so stressful and exhausting.
So exhausting.
It's a lot of mental energy, a lot of emotional labor. Like, the result is emotional burnout. And then you're sitting there feeling like, wow, why am I so depleted all the time? Because you're busy arguing with people because you think you're always right. And that's not productive in any sense. And I think because our egos are very sensitive, we do have to connect with our egos in the sense of, one, being aware of our triggers. I think that would be very productive. Yeah. If you're aware of your triggers, triggers. And if you're having honest conversations with yourselves through reflective questioning and just spending time with yourself, thinking about it from a different perspective that's not yours, I think can be very productive because it helps you see like, okay, one, I was being emotionally attached to the situation. It's not about me sometimes. Sometimes it's about something bigger than myself. And that's okay because the ego wants you to be the center of attention. Yeah. It likes you to be in control. 2, what am I really protecting? Is it that I'm worried about coming off as being weak or inferior? Is it that it's bringing us some insecurities? Like, what is it that I'm really protecting? And how accurate is that for me? Yeah. So I think having a relationship with your ego, a very vulnerable relationship with your ego can be very helpful because the ego does play a big role because it's trying to protect our self-image. And as much as it's trying to do that, sometimes it's not very productive because it goes into an intuitive protection. But that response may not always be accurate because there's so many contexts. There's so many ways you can view the context of that situation. Yeah. But your ego is going straight to whatever insecurity you're trying to hide. Yeah. So it's about having an honest, okay, this triggered me. Why? Why is my ego trying to take charge right now? Yeah. And how can I have a vulnerable, connected relationship with my ego in a way that I can respond and self-regulate better before giving a reaction or standing on always being right? This is why I struggle with watching reality TV because every time I watch reality TV, I'm just like, everyone just want to be right. I'm just like, bro, this is so frustrating.
It's a mix of egos in the same room.
I know. It's frustrating watching from the other perspective, but sometimes I sit down and I reflect. I'm like, Aisha, you've been in this situation, right? Yeah. So it's good to have that knowledge. Though. Yeah.
Like, it's really hard. And we want to obviously recognize that this is not from a place of judgment. We're literally saying that this is a journey with yourself as long as you are living. Yeah. In the sense where you're always going to sort of keep navigating your world and your ego from that perspective. And I love this notion that you said of having a relationship with your ego. I agree with it 100%.
Good.
And if I'm being honest with you, I think that is what has saved me. In the sense where I'm pretty sure all of these things I'm sharing, the people that I might be relating with don't even know. Right. They don't even recognize that because before it even happens, I'm already having that conversation with my ego and myself and being honest with myself. Yeah. Like, in this moment, are you doing this because you're afraid of being vulnerable? In this moment, are you doing this because it hurts to hear the truth? In this moment, like,
wait. Go back and say that again because that is so true.
In this moment, are you reacting this way or feeling this way or whatever it is because it hurts to hear the truth? And there's something about when we're held accountable that, it makes us feel weird.
It's uncomfortable.
Let's be real. Even the most accountable, whoever it is that's out there that will say, I am the most self-accountable. Even you,
it doesn't feel good.
You feel that, like, that initial sting, like, you mean to tell me I'm not perfect?
Yep.
Like, what do you mean by that?
Your ego will shoot up right there.
I honestly think that it's been so helpful for me because something I had really gotten to understand with myself, and I came to an understanding that. And I said, Paula, I don't want you to ever be in a position where you feel like you're too proud to learn. I feel like you're too proud to, like, grow, or you feel like you're too proud to evolve because it's too difficult for you to sit with what you're receiving. Yeah. And now you're stunting your own growth.
Right.
And it really helped me also kind of just see that also means I'm not perfect. Too. There's so much that I don't know even about my own self. Right. That I'm going to have to learn through the eyes of other people. Right. And I'm going to have to be okay with that because if it's important to me to learn about myself so that I can grow and become a better person, the bigger picture should never be about my ego. Agreed. So I have to almost learn how to work with this thing and understand this thing so it doesn't have more influence and power over me. Right. Then I find myself in positions where everybody's just like, I don't want to even have this conversation with Paula. Because this one always thinks that she's right. There's a lot of people that out
people
there.
Like that too.
There's a lot of people out there when you have conversation, they won't be like, it's okay. Just go. It's okay. Yes, fine. We get it. We agree with you.
I know
I
people
don't
like
ever
that.
want to be that person. So I absolutely agree with this notion of meeting your ego where it's at. Right. And really having an understanding of what your triggers and your stressors are. It makes an excellent point.
I love what you said about there's so much I don't know. The moment we feel like we know everything, that's the moment that we stop growing. There's so much we don't know.
Repeat that.
I can't lie. It left my brain.
She said, the moment we feel like we know everything is the moment that we stop growing.
Thank you, Paula. You've said it even better than I did. But basically, I want everyone to keep challenging themselves to be open-minded and to be in a space where they're always checking in with themselves, like what Paula was saying about, you don't know everything. You can't really know everything. And when someone presents an information to you, it's not about fact checking it, whether it's right, if it's directly connected to what you know, your beliefs, your values. It's more about, can I explore that a little bit more to see what that information means and how it's making sense to this other person, and how can that fit in my own world in a way that makes sense for me? Because if we're always in a space where we feel like we know it all, and like Paula was saying, there's people like that. I actually know people like that. So that's why it's so funny to me. It's because it's always very difficult to have conversations with those people. And despite having relationships with those people, those are the people that I feel least connected with, because it's just like tense, one.
We have to just... It's very important, because there's going to be people who are the people who do this. There's going to be people who are struggling to understand, why can I not have a deeper connection with the people who do this?
Right.
So I just wanted to just tell you to just please, sorry to interject, to just emphasize that a little, because that's a very great point.
Yeah,
like
it causes a lot
connection.
of tension. Right, you lose connection, it causes tension. Now, when I interact with those people, my guards are up, because I always feel like the conversations are one-sided. And it's gotten to the point where it's like, I know that if I try to challenge that person a little bit, because again, we've spoken about the ego, because their egos are always very defensive, we're not going anywhere. It's like you're talking to a wall. So now I know what the interactions are. It seems like a structure. Like, when you're interviewing someone, you know the questions you want to go through. That's what the relationship feels like. Now, imagine having a relationship with someone like that. It just sounds sad. It doesn't sound real. It doesn't sound honest. It doesn't sound like there's any growth happening in the relationship. And there's something you said that I'm so glad I remember now. So it's the thing about, like, you're not going to know yourself 100%. So when people are holding you accountable, when people are trying to make you aware of like a behavior, it's not 100% about them trying to attack you or them trying to make it
be critical,
point you and say, oh, you're a bad person, you did this. Sometimes it's from a place of love. But if you feel like you're always right, then you will never really know that part of you. And one thing my mom always said was, the things you don't learn from what people tell you, you will learn from outside, especially from home. Basically, what she's saying is, if I'm telling you something about yourself from home and you don't listen to me and you don't learn, somebody will tell you outside.
Absolutely.
And she used to say in Yoruba, it makes it more sweeter, but I don't know the Yoruba. But the knowledge there is, be open to what people are saying to you, because there might be something you need to reflect on and learn and grow from. Because if you're always right, there's no room for growth. There's no room for connectedness.
Absolutely.
There's no room for self-reflection. There's no room for meeting your ego where it's at. You're just going to be a walking defense mechanism, and that's so unhealthy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You make such an excellent point. And just a disclaimer, we're not saying that, because there are people who communicate things in very aggressive and abrasive ways, or it sort of sounds like they are being critical. Do you see what I'm trying to say? In the sense where it's not really, I'm coming from a loving place, but direct place. It comes from that perspective. So obviously checking your sources, checking who you're receiving things from is very necessary. But even in situations like that, I would say to some degree also being able to recognize that it's okay to not appreciate the way in which someone has communicated something to you.
Right.
And it's okay to take it with a grain of salt as well, because regardless, they need to adjust the way in which they communicate to you.
Right.
But it's also okay to maybe even just still check in with yourself.
Right.
And it's not because you're doing them a favor. Right. It's because you actually care about your own growth, regardless of whom it might be coming from or how it might be communicated to you. So as we're obviously rounding up this conversation, we've covered a lot of ground with this conversation. And I think that something that might be helpful for us to just really talk about is, like, what does one do if they actually recognize that they are someone who likes to be right, or they're someone who finds themselves engaging in conflict with someone who likes to be right. Like, how do we find balance in wanting to receive validation? Because validation is not a bad thing.
No, it's not.
It's only if we're dependent on validation that it becomes an unhealthy thing.
Right.
So how do we find balance between being able to receive that validation that's necessary sometimes, but still being able to understand that we need to make space for everybody else's differences to exist, and we're not losing autonomy as a result of that?
When you asked that question, what I thought in my mind was choosing your battles and letting go with purpose, because not everything needs to be addressed, one.
True.
Two, some things can be addressed without you really necessarily getting anything back. Like, it's just about being open, about communicating. It's not about being right. It's about, hey, I just brought this to your attention. Hey, this is my observation. And I'm saying that because when we reflect and we think about choosing our battles, it gives us the time to really ask ourselves, like, is this a big thing? Is this a small thing? Like, what's really most important here? Is it about being right? Or is it about, I want to communicate what I think would be best for my friend? Because if you think about it in those two different ways, there's two different outcomes, right? Because if you're thinking about being right, it would be more of not a productive outcome. And the way you communicate it will be different too. If you're thinking about being right, sometimes the way you communicate it may not be very effective. But if you're thinking more about it like, this is a thing that I want to use to help my friend, or this is a thing that I think would be helpful for my friend to be more aware of, the way you communicate it would be a little bit more lighter, right? Yeah. But also, when you choose your battles, you have one inner peace. Because I know I was in a relationship one time and I didn't choose my battles. Everything was a everything was a battle.
And I did not know peace.
I really did not know peace. I'm not gonna lie, because I always felt like I was abandoning my values, and I was like always compromising for that person, and this person needs to always see from my perspective and understand the pain they are causing me. And we're not saying that that's wrong. We're just saying that sometimes you choosing your battles is not abandoning those values. It's recognizing that letting go in some situations is what's best for that time. Because you also have to think about the context. You have to think about how you're communicating it. You have to think about the emotional cost. You have to think about the long-term cost, right? Yeah. Sometimes when you choose battles that don't necessarily need to be battled, can lead to the loss of a friendship that you actually really cherish, right? Yeah. And specifically if you know the person that you're dealing with, if that person is also like a defensive, I always want to be right, there's no one's going to win. It's going to be a lose-lose situation. So basically what I'm saying is letting go can be a space for you to self-reflect more and grow in your own way. And it can also give you space to shift your perspective, because sometimes those battles are coming up because you're only seeing that person in one light or that situation in one light. So sometimes thinking about, maybe this battle doesn't need to be fought right now, can help you say, oh, you know what? That person didn't even mean it that way. So imagine if I brought it up to them, that would have caused conflict. You know what I mean? Yeah. So what do you think?
And what, like, even from what you're saying, just taking what you're saying, I'm hearing just asking yourself, when you have that reaction, take my favorite two-step verification before you sign in. Do the two-step verification. So meaning before you react, do the two-step verification of your feelings and what's going on, and really ask yourself, or maybe you might even just need to tell yourself, me choosing to believe that I am right in this moment is going to come at the cost of losing a deeper connection with this person. So which one matters to me the most? Yeah. And if it really does matter to you the most that choosing to believe you're right, then good luck to you. At least you chose something.
I agree.
On the other hand, if it really doesn't matter to you, that is sort of where you can start allowing yourself really open, or want to be more open and honest with your ego, like you said, or with the relationship they have with your ego. Yeah. And I would say that something that was very profound for me in this healthy dating dynamic that I'm in is there was a lot of me wanting this person to be open with me and keep sharing with me and feel like they can trust what we have. I'm not like trying to control you or anything like that, but more so me feeling as though like, oh, I hope I'm providing you what you're providing me type of situation. You're providing me this safe space to be able to show up this way. So now they're being honest. Now they're showing up. Now they're also being honest with you and direct with you about their feelings, even if you don't like what you're hearing. So now it's like, So I found myself in a moment where I had to almost like ask myself that it's crazy how it's like a double-edged sword in the sense where you want that connectedness, but you're the same person that is harming that connectedness and having to be really honest with yourself. That I am playing a role in causing that harm. So for me, really having to be honest with myself and just saying, okay, you know what? It is more important to me to know how this person truly feels, regardless of how it makes me feel, because I want to be connected to this person. Yeah. And I think for me, that really shed a lot of light in terms of just really understanding that, like, okay, I am all right with having to sit with discomfort if it means that I can build better intimacy. So it's really a question. It's really a self-reflection and just being honest with yourself.
I agree.
This is a good conversation.
It's good. And Paula, what you said really connected with me because we do need to have self-compassion with ourselves. You know, be kind to yourself. Just because you're letting go doesn't mean that you should not be harsh on yourself and now be ruminating on it for weeks and months. And now that leads to some serious combative relationship. No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying that sometimes just have self-compassion that you don't know everything and you don't have everything figured out. And that's okay. We are all not perfect. We make mistakes. We don't know everything. We're just here to grow and we're just here to learn. And I think when you think about it that way, you have some ease. You know, there's some ease that comes with it because you're like open to new things. You're open to learning. And there's less pressure to always be right, in quotes. So,
well said. Well said. Wow.
Yeah. What a powerful
way to start the season, Aisha.
I know, right? Listen, you know what's funny? Since we've been saying right. And that word has just been in my mouth, right. But as we wrap up, what is one thing you want listeners to take away from this episode?
If you truly value connection and connectedness the way in which I believe a lot of us human beings do, it would not be important to you to be right.
Ooh, I like that.
How about you?
I think I will wrap up with there's so much we don't know, right? And so if we live with that, if I don't know what I don't know, there's room for growth.
That's all I'm going to say. I don't know, there's room for growth. I like that.
I know. I try to make it very cheeky, but...
All right. How can our listeners find us?
As always, you can always find us at DWHYA Podcast on Instagram, X. And you could always email us info@dwhyapodcast.com. That's where you find us. So we would like to hear your thoughts, feelings, and, you know, this is a non-judgmental space.
And
so
how can our listeners also find you?
Oh, you can find me on Instagram at ab.popoola. What about you, Paula? How can the listeners find you?
You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, I believe, LinkedIn at paula.b.martins.
Thank you. I didn't put TikTok because I don't know if the app is done at this point. But hey, if TikTok is still there, we would love that. We love TikTok. Okay? All right. Thank you.
Till next time.
Bye.
Bye.